All right, we will go on the record. CR 10-23-3237, State of Idaho versus Robert Eugene Stahn. State is present, represented by Scott Davis. Mr. Stahn is present, along with his attorney, John Stosich. This is the sign.
That's the same.
Do you have a spare, Mr. Stosich?
I'm sorry?
Do you have a spare?
I do.
Okay. We are here today for a change of plea. There is a plea agreement that has been signed and presented to this court. I will make sure that we actually get that filed at the conclusion of today, if that's acceptable, Mr. Stosich.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Having said that, is it the intention to move forward with the change of plea?
Correct.
Then if you would, please outline for the record the pertinent terms of the plea agreement, Mr. Stosich.
Your Honor, Mr. Stahn will plead guilty to the charge as is in the information. It's not an offered plea, or it's just a standard plea, Your Honor. I guess, provisions of the plea agreement that are relevant for discussion would be the fact that both parties are going to join in a recommendation for actual disposition of probation, which the parties agree would be binding on the court. All the other elements, such as whether or not Mr. Stahn would receive a withheld judgment or whatever, or not, and if a sentence is imposed, the parties are free to recommend the elements of the sentence. And so that's again, like I said, the relevant part would be the binding part, Your Honor.
Understood. Was this plea agreement reached as part of a mediation process?
Correct.
All right, Mr. Davis, is that the agreement the state reached with Mr. Stahn?
It is, Your Honor.
And through that mediation process, did the victim have an opportunity to participate in that?
Your Honor, the victim's representative, her mother did. The victim is a nonverbal adult.
All right.
And Your Honor, also with regards to the plea, we will be making a representation about the investigative record rather than have Mr. Stahn state. And I would defer to the court on this since it's a binding. I'm a little wary of Mr. Stahn's Fifth Amendment right as far as articulating the elements, as far as Mr. Stahn articulating the elements of the charge, Your Honor.
For today's purposes.
Correct. It's not an offered plea, but I wouldn't be making a representation of the facts that we rely on, and I think it will become clear when I do that what I'm talking about, and then Mr. Stahn can be asked whether he agrees with that or not. Is that okay?
Mr. Davis, any objection to that?
No, Your Honor.
All right. I think we can get there.
Yeah. So Mr. Stahn, what kicked off this investigation was a self-disclosure statement written by Mr. Stahn, which was relied on by the investigators, and so that's what I'll be referring to, the facts in the self-disclosure statement.
All right. All right, having said that, let me circle back to you, Mr. Stahn. You heard your attorney outline the pertinent parts of the plea agreement. Is that the agreement you reached with the state of Idaho?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. I have questions of you in just a moment, but I need to ask your attorney some questions. Mr. Stosich, do you believe you had sufficient time to fully investigate this case?
Yes.
Did you have an opportunity to review police reports, witness statements, if any, other documents that might be presented as evidence that the matter went to trial?
Yes.
Did you have an opportunity to discuss those with Mr. Stahn, as well as whether Mr. Stahn had evidence or witnesses that he might call in defense of these charges?
Yes.
Did you review this case for purposes of whether there were motions that needed to be filed to protect Mr. Stahn's rights and potential defenses?
Your Honor, in this case, as I stated a minute ago, the case was initiated by a self-disclosure statement that Mr. Stahn made and then presented to his spouse at the time. They're divorced now, but at the time he presented the self-disclosure written statement, they were married. There was a question in my mind whether or not spousal privilege extended to Mr. Stahn with regards to privilege on that disclosure. And there is an exception for that, for spousal privilege when it involves the, a disclosure or disclosure of criminal activity with certain classes of victims. And this case falls into those exceptions. And so as far as spousal privilege or clergy privilege, which also was involved in this case, we didn't have that privilege in this case because of the exceptions. We have had a psychosexual and evaluation already performed and a polygraph already performed, which Mr. Davis was advised of at the mediation, and we'll be asking the court to include those in the PSI. And the reason I bring that up is they were consistent with the self-disclosure statement, those evaluations and the polygraph. So in answer to the court's question, those would be the issues that would have arisen as far as defending Mr. Stahn in this case, and we've resolved those.
All right. Knowing what you know about Mr. Stahn, do you believe he's fully competent enough to understand the charge and the consequences of pleading guilty to the charge?
I do.
Knowing what you know about the case and Mr. Stahn, do you consent to him pleading guilty pursuant to the terms of the plea agreement?
Yes, Your Honor, I do.
All right. Mr. Stahn, at this stage of the process, you still have all of your constitutional rights in place. You still have the right to have the matter heard by a jury. You still have the right to confront your accusers. You still have the right to present any defenses that you might have. And you still have the right against self-incrimination. Do you understand you still have those constitutional rights?
Yes, Your Honor.
But if we proceed forward, you will eventually be waiving those constitutional rights. Do you understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Part of that will be your right against self-incrimination. That means is that no one can order or force you to testify or present any evidence that a judge or a jury could use to find you guilty of this charge. But if we move forward, Mr. Stosage will outline some factual information that would be presented to a jury. And I will be asking whether you agree to those facts and also agree whether or not a jury would likely find you guilty or there's a high likelihood that a jury could find you guilty of these charges. Do you understand that?
Yes.
And by doing that, you would in effect be waiving your constitutional right against self-incrimination. Do you understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Knowing that, do you still want to proceed?
Yes.
Then if you would, please stand, raise your right hand. My clerk will place you under oath.
Raise your hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this pending cause shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you. Please be seated. Could you state your full name for the record?
Robert Eugene Stahn,
Mr. Stahn, how old are you?
65,
How far did you go in school?
master's degree.
Are you feeling well today?
Yes, sir.
Are you under the influence of alcohol, drugs, or controlled substances today?
No, Your Honor.
Are you addicted to alcohol, drugs, or controlled substances?
No, Your Honor.
Do you have any mental or psychological issues or concerns that would prevent you from understanding what we're doing today?
No, Your Honor.
Are you on probation or parole?
No, sir.
I need to advise Mr. Stahn, if you are not a U.S. citizen, pleading guilty could have an impact on your immigration status. Do you understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
You remember the charge that you'll be pleading guilty to today?
Yes, Your Honor.
What is that charge?
It is sexual exploitation, sexual abuse, or exploitation of a vulnerable adult.
And you recall the possible maximum penalties?
Yes, Your Honor. 15 years and 25 years and $25,000.
Correct. All right. The plea agreement is binding on the court. I need to advise that what that means is there is a particular recommendation that is contained in the plea agreement that both parties will recommend that I impose as your sentence. I have the opportunity to review more information through a PSI and through the psychosexual evaluation your attorney already referred to. And if for some reason I believe that that sentence is not an appropriate sentence, then I will advise you and your attorney. What that will do is it will give you an opportunity to withdraw your guilty plea and start this process over. Do you understand that's what the binding piece of this means?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Davis.
Your Honor, Mr. Stahn indicated that he believed that this charge would be punishable by up to 25 years and $25,000 fine. That is incorrect. is 15 years,
That's what I thought.
$25,000.
That's what I thought. I was just reading it from the information.
I'm reading it from the information also, so the information had the typographical error.
Right.
That is correct, Your Honor.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Davis. So, Mr. Stahn, you understand you actually overshot
Yes.
on the
15
maximum?
years, yes.
All right. All right, Mr. Stahn, do you believe you had sufficient time to fully discuss this case with Mr. Stosich?
Yes, Your Honor.
Did you have an opportunity to review the evidence the state says it has and that would potentially and likely be presented to a jury if the matter went to a jury trial?
Yes,
Did you have an opportunity to discuss with Mr. Stosich whether you had any defenses to these charges?
yes, Your Honor.
Did Mr. Stosich refuse or fail to do anything that you asked him to do?
No, Your Honor.
Are you fully satisfied with his representation?
Yes,
You believe your constitutional or civil rights have been violated in any way through this process?
no, Your Honor.
Did anyone coerce you or pressure you to get you to plead guilty?
No,
Did anyone tell you I'd be easy or lenient if you pled guilty?
no,
Did anyone promise a reward if you pled guilty?
no,
Did anyone threaten you or intimidate you or anyone close to you to get you to plead guilty?
no, Your Honor.
Are you pleading guilty freely and voluntarily?
Yes,
Before I sentence you, Mr. Stahn, I will order a pre-sentence investigation report, and that report will give me background information about you. That background information will include criminal background, if there is any, and other background that I will use to put together a sentence that I believe is appropriate. Do you understand that?
yes, Your Honor.
And you also need to understand you'll have an opportunity to review this report after it is completed to make sure of its accuracy. Do you understand that?
Yes,
Mr. Stahn, as part of this charge, it fits under the umbrella that would require you to register as a sex offender for the rest of your entire life. Do you understand that?
yes,
In your honor, I have advised Mr. Stahn that under certain cases, is an opportunity to be removed from the sex offender registry.
Yes, after an initial 10-year period, but you need to understand the way the statute's listed and the way it's written is you have to register for life unless you fit under one of these exceptions and you make an appropriate application at a later date. Do you understand that?
yes, Your Honor.
All right. As part of this process, I will order that a psychosexual evaluation be prepared. It's my understanding one has already been prepared. Did you have an opportunity to discuss the ramifications of taking that psychosexual evaluation with Mr. Stosich before you took that exam?
Yes, sir.
All right. Do you have an opportunity to discuss with him your right, your Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination before you took that test?
Yes, Your
All
Honor.
right. And knowing that you took that evaluation voluntarily,
Yes,
understand that I will order that evaluation be provided by you and your attorney as part of this pre-sentence investigation process.
yes,
And I will use that as part of my sentencing procedure to determine whether or not the recommendations that will be made are appropriate.
yes, Your Honor.
All right. If we continue forward, Mr. Stahn, I am going to circle back. Again, you will be waiving your right to have the matter heard by a jury. Do you understand that?
Yes,
You will waive your right to confront your accusers. Do you understand that?
yes,
And you will also be waiving your right to present your own defenses. Do you understand that?
yes,
Moving forward, Mr. Stahn, you will also lose some constitutional rights. You will lose your right to vote, your right to hold public office, your right to serve on a jury, and your right to possess firearms. Do you understand you're losing those constitutional rights?
yes, Your Honor.
And if after today you're in possession of a firearm, you could be subject to additional federal and state prosecution. Do you understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Knowing everything that we have discussed today, Mr. Stahn, do you still intend to proceed forward?
Yes,
Is there anything you need to ask Mr. Stosich before I ask you to enter a plea?
no, Your Honor.
And regarding count 1, adult sexually abuse or exploitation of a vulnerable adult, how do you plead?
Guilty, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Stosich, what are the facts that make this guilty plea for Mr. Stahn?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Stahn, at the time set out in the information, had living in his home a vulnerable adult, J.S. During that residency, Mr. Stahn did physically touch J.S. in such a way that it caused J.S. to change the way her clothing was, and that caused her to expose herself to Mr. Stahn, which was done in order to appeal to Mr. Stahn's prurient desires, Your Honor.
And did this happen in Bonneville County, Idaho?
Correct, Your Honor. Their residence was in Bonneville County at the time this happened.
And did this happen sometime between January 1 of 2021 and December 31 of 2021?
It did, and those facts and those dates and places are documented in a self-disclosure statement that Mr. Stahn authored in order to make corrections in his life. That disclosures were revealed to law enforcement and the investigation ensued. Mr. Stahn has never contradicted those disclosures, and they are attached to the pre-sentence or the psychosexual evaluation, that self-disclosure, so the court will be able to review that. We may ask, because in that self-disclosure statement there are other statements that transcend these facts of this crime that may be relevant. Dr. Hatzenbuehler referred to them throughout the psychosexual, but we may ask the court to redact portions of that self-disclosure as far as part of the record at some point, Your Honor, and just leave in the facts that are relevant to the charge and the information.
All right, well, I'll leave that up to you
Sure.
at the appropriate time, and if we need to have a hearing in advance of the sentencing or in advance of anything else, then I'll leave that up to your processes.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Stahn, your attorney outlined factually what event or events occurred that make you guilty of the charge. You agree those are the facts that occurred at that time?
Yes, Your Honor.
And do you agree that, given those facts, you are in fact guilty of the charge listed in the information?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Davis, is that sufficient for the state's purposes?
I believe so, Your Honor.
All right. I believe it is sufficient, given the language of the information and the factual basis as outlined by Mr. Stosich and confirmed by Mr. Stahn. Do you find that Mr. Stahn is fully competent to understand the charges against him, as well as the consequences of pleading guilty to those charges? I also find that he consents to the terms of the plea agreement that he himself signed today's date. I find that there's a factual basis for the guilty plea and that the facts were knowingly, intelligently, and voluntarily given. We'll have the clerk enter the guilty plea. And we'll set the matter for sentencing December 21, 2023 at 10 a.m. I will order a pre-sentence investigation be prepared. I will also order a psychosexual evaluation be prepared. I will note that if the psychosexual evaluation, well, let me ask this. Mr. Stosich, how old is that PSE?
Very recent.
Fairly recent. It's within the last 4 months, Your Honor.
All right,
3 months, I believe.
Mr. Davis, is it recent enough if they submit that it would comply with this court's order for a psychosexual evaluation as part of this PSI?
I believe so, Your Honor.
Your Honor, it was done, I think it was done either in August or early September, and the polygraph was done immediately thereafter.
All right, so I'll order the PSE, but if you choose to submit the one that has already been completed, that will comply with this court's order
Great.
for purposes of sentencing.
Thank you.
Mr. Stosich, any other evaluations I should order, knowing what you know about the case, and Mr. Stahn?
You know, Mr. Stahn doesn't present as needing a mental health evaluation. I think that the PSE would have covered that in any event, Your Honor. So under the statute, I don't believe there are any other sentencing evaluations that would be authorized under the statute, Your Honor, or necessary. He doesn't have any substance abuse issues, so.
All right. All right. Mr. Stahn, you've been handed a packet of information.
Yes, sir.
That is necessary information for the pre-sentence investigation report. There's a phone number on there. You need to contact that phone number within 24 hours and schedule an interview. If you have any questions about what is being asked of you in that document or what information needs to be provided, you just need to direct those to Mr. Stosage's office. Do you understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Do we have the terms of the sex offense? Sorry. All right, Mr. Stahn, we're gonna have,
Sorry, Judge.
it's all right, you good?
Yeah.
I'm gonna have two other documents handed to you. Now, they have to deal with terms of probation. I obviously have not made a determination whether I will accept the plea agreement. However, the plea agreement does contemplate that I place you on a term of probation. I'm going to hand you the standard terms of probation. You have those already, Mr. Sosa?
We have the agreement.
And I've also handed you the probationary terms that are required for somebody that is under sex offender supervision. If I agree with the plea agreement, and in fact, at the conclusion of the sentencing, place you on probation, I will ask if you agree to accept probation on the terms that are outlined in the documents that you've been handed. So you just need to make sure that you are familiar with what would be required if I place you on probation. Do you understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Stosage, anything else today?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Mr. Davis, anything else today?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
I guess there is one more thing. Mr. Stahn posted bond, and I request that that be continued, Your Honor.
You will be.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Stahn, do you have any questions of the court with what we did or what the plan is moving forward?
None, Your Honor.
All right, and with that, we'll be in recess on this matter. Mr. Stahn, you are excused. Mr. Stosage, is that your last matter?
It is, Your Honor, thank you.
You are also excused. Thank you.
Judge. Good to see you.